Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the 1044, a new weekly webisode and podcast from the editors here at CCJ, Overdrive, and Truck Parts Service. I'm James Gillette, and my co-host on the other side is Jason Cannon, editor of CCJ. We'll be hitting YouTube, Facebook, and your preferred podcast listening app each week with a new episode of the 1044. So go ahead and subscribe to CCJ's YouTube channel if you haven't already, and find the 1044 in your favorite podcast app and subscribe there too. This week on the 1044, Jason's checking in from Madras, Oregon, where he spent part of the week test driving the all-new Western Star 49X, and he's going to give us his impressions from behind the wheel. And I think this is his first test drive since March, so it's kind of a big deal. Jason, what's up, man?
Hey James, I'm really excited. We're about to hop in this new Western Star 49X. This one's got an Allison transmission in it. My assistant for the day is Tim Norton. He's Western Star's training manager. He's actually holding the camera right now. So Tim, tell everybody hello.
Hello.
As you can see, I'm all decked out and I'm official. I have on my bright yellow safety vest, my hard hat, my mask, of course, which is fogging up my glasses. So we're gonna hop in here, take a couple hot laps around the quarry here, and we'll report back, and we'll probably hear a little bit more from Tim here sometime this afternoon. But right now, James, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna hop in this truck and have a good time.
All right, coming up in just a few minutes, Jason's going to give us his early impressions of his test drive. And as you heard there, we have Tim Norton from Western Star as a special guest this week. Also in this episode of the 1044, what's a Biden presidency mean for trucking industry regulations like hours of service and emissions restrictions? And from the mailbag, with Navistar being acquired by Volkswagen's Traton division, might there be a resurgence of cabovers in the United States? So let's dive in. Jason, all told, I know that you're driving several dump truck configurations and some heavy haul and severe duty 49X models. So what's going on in Oregon?
Hey James, I'm back here with Tim now. Tim's on this side of the camera versus being on the other side of the camera. We've had a pretty big day today so far. We did some quarry driving. We did a little bit of on-track driving at the Daimler test track, which is kind of right behind you. And we're going to head out on the road here in a few minutes, but we wanted to check in real quick and kind of give you an overview of what we've been doing today, and also wanted to give Tim the opportunity, because you'll get to read about it in my test drive recap, but I wanted to get Tim in front of you and let him tell you a little bit about the Western Star 49X from his perspective. So Tim, if you had to give your elevator speech on the 49X, what would you say?
Yes, well, this all-new 49X is really a purpose-built truck, and we use that term a lot, purpose-built, and it's really designed for the tough, rugged applications that Western Star is known for. It's built with a steel-reinforced aluminum cab, so it saves weight where it matters, but also is strong and reinforced where it counts. It's even got a hood system that can really absorb impacts and basically roll with the punches when it's driving off-road and taking a lot of those heavy hits. And it's even really designed for upfit in mind. So any bodies that we might be installing, any sort of equipment, it's got an advanced electrical system. It's got frame options and a clear back of cabs. So whatever an equipment manufacturer wants to install on this chassis, they can certainly do so quickly and easily.
James, I can tell you this truck is absolutely tough. When we did the quarry drive this morning, we beat the daylights out of 3 of them in some pretty real-world conditions, and it was certainly up to the challenge. It was a lot of fun. Tim and I did a lot of bouncing around the cab, but that's just part of life. It was a lot of fun.
Well, hey, I'm glad y'all are out there having fun while many of us are still stuck behind our desks here. If you want to read Jason's full recap of his time behind the wheel of the Western Star 49X, visit ccjdigital.com and see the full report there. All right, time for this week's mailbag. Jason, we've had some questions coming in about the Navistar and Traton deal, which was finalized this week, and you reported on that on Monday. For those who have forgotten, Volkswagen's Traton division, which is the company's global trucks business, has acquired Navistar, who makes international trucks here in the United States. Traton also owns a few European outfits, all of which are Cabover configurations, obviously. So we got this question here that came in to the mailbag from Facebook. Does this mean that there will be new Cabovers sold again in the United States? Jason, take it away.
James, that's a really good question. It's an interesting question because now it would give Volkswagen that global footprint that it's always been after. But my answer to that is going to be probably not. I just think the conventional is in North America is just the truth, the light, and the way for the foreseeable future. And I don't see Volkswagen having spent all that money to acquire the company and then fundamentally reinvent it. But Tim, what are your thoughts about the Cabover in North America?
Well, it's an interesting design that has a lot of advantages, and actually, Daimler Trucks does offer a cabover in the North American market, the Iconic SD low cabover. It's a low forward cab, so it's very easy to get in and out of, very safe for operators, and it's been very popular for us. So in some areas where the cabover does make sense, it's a very popular option.
Well, there you go, James. If Volkswagen wants to compete on the global level, they better get after it and maybe have an entry in the market to compete with the Iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, James, I actually do have a mailbag question for you. It comes from a CCJ reader, and I'm going to kick it over to Tim because Tim's just standing here and we want to keep Tim involved. So, Tim, please ask James his mailbag question.
All right. So the question is, as we see new administrations come into leadership. Many times regulations and things like that will change and adjust. With the new incoming administration, do we see any changes to things like hours of service and things like that, emissions regulations that might change over the future?
Excellent and timely question, Tim. And thank you, reader, for submitting that one. James, take it away.
All right, thanks, Jason and Tim. So to answer this reader's question, there's obviously a lot that we don't know about what a Biden administration will ultimately mean for transportation and specifically for trucking. You'd obviously expect a more active regulatory environment under a Democratic administration. And if you take a look back at the Obama years, we saw a much more active FMCSA then than we did under President Trump. And that's partially because of some of the early executive orders that President Trump issued that restricted the number of regulations that agencies like FMCSA could hand down. And you obviously expect Biden to rescind some of those. I think he said off the bat he's got a slate of executive orders lined up that will undo some of those Trump-era executive orders, and you'd have to think some of the ones that blocked regulations would be on the chopping block. But to get specifically to the two areas of regulation that this reader asked about, emissions and hours of service. For starters, I think it's really hard to foresee a Biden administration undoing the regulations that were just put into effect. I think there would be a huge outcry from the industry on that front, and it really just wouldn't make sense from a regulatory perspective. I think maybe you could see FMCSA saying something along the lines of, we'll evaluate hours of service again, even though they just spent the last 2 to 3 years evaluating what was in place and making reforms to change what was there. And it's not like hours of service is something that could be fiddled with all the time. This year's reforms in many ways were fairly muted changes compared to what was in place prior. And they were the first significant overhaul to hours of service regs since 2004. So that's 16 years. You put that in the perspective of presidential terms. That's 4 presidential terms encompassing Bush's second term, both of Obama's terms, and Trump's term. And that's how long it took for hours of service to change this time. So it's really hard to imagine another significant overhaul happening again under a Biden administration. On emissions, however, I think that is an area where there could be some renewed activity in terms of regulations, specifically trucking emissions. One name that's being floated as a possible head of the EPA under Biden is Mary Nichols, also known as California's Queen of Green. And she's been on the California Air Resources Board since the mid-1970s, and she's been chief of the California Air Resources Board since 1979. And she's been especially aggressive over the past 2 decades in reining in vehicle emissions in California, as we all know and as we all have watched firsthand. So if Biden does go that route for his EPA pick, I think obviously that signals the type of aggressive stance his administration might take on emissions regulations. And the second headline this week that caught my eye was from the Washington Post. And I read the story, and it basically said that climate policy is likely to be something that's woven into Biden's administration across all departments like defense, agriculture, treasury, and obviously the Department of Transportation. So it's hard to translate those broad themes right now into what that would mean specifically for trucking and for trucking emissions regulations. But it's something that seems clear that the Biden administration is going to be serious about from the onset. So that's our mailbag this week. If you have a question you'd like us to answer in an upcoming mailbag, shoot us a note at 1044trucking@gmail.com. Again, that's 1044trucking@gmail.com, 1044trucking@gmail.com, or give us a call, 404-491-1380, and leave us a message. And we'd love to hear your questions, your comments, or your criticisms. All right, on to roadside attractions, where we hit lighter, quirkier, or news otherwise worth highlighting based completely on our own discretion. Jason, speaking of roadside attractions, it really does not get more attractive than this year's 5 Flashiest Fleets, does it?
Yeah, James, we wrapped up the 5 Flashiest Fleets last week. All the trucks are up. That's one of my favorite programs that we do at CCJ. We get to honor and recognize a lot of the carriers that go the extra mile with some of the graphic packages, some of the really cool paint. And there's a lot of people that are really creative with their marketing strategies and the way they put their trucks out there. Obviously this year, and it's every year, we have a lot of military entries, a lot of American pride. You know, that's sort of the standard in trucking. You know, it's the all-American job, really. It's the American cowboy. But you can check out the entire gallery of the top 5 online at ccjdigital.com. And I've already got several emails from people who missed the submission deadline for 2020, and they're looking forward to 2021. So look forward to seeing all those cool trucks over the series of the next 12 months. But I appreciate you guys hanging in there with us. Tim, thank you for joining us. And you know, let's hop in one of these. Let's get on the road. And James, I'll see you next week.
All right, big thanks to Tim for joining us this week on the 1044, and Jason, safe travels home. All right, well, that's this edition of the 1044. Hit us with your mailbag questions at 1044trucking@gmail.com. That's 1044trucking@gmail.com, or give us a call, 404-491-1380, and leave us a message. And until next week, take care, stay safe.